No. So I'm just gonna wait for a few people to come in. Before I do that, just to go over a couple things real quick. A couple quick announcements. I was away for. Been away since last Thursday. Got back last night. So figure I'll shoot a quick video. But again, a couple quick announcements, which 29th, believe it or not, is creeping up on us already. The ritual invocation of Set Heru. Those that have contacted and requested an invite, I've gotten back pretty much to everybody, I believe. I just want to make sure. So if you are attending that ritual, you should make sure you have the instructions of what you're going to need to show up for that ritual. If you are interested in attending the ritual and you have not requested an invite, the cutoff date is the 25th to the 26th, a couple days before. That's where we have a head count. We know exactly who's coming. You can email the email that you see in the description box of the videos, which I'll give in a minute. I know a couple people had emailed for consultations, but as I said, I was away since last Thursday. I just got back late last night. So I did not do any consultations for the last several days because I was on a little vacation, little trip, which was a very productive trip. Got some work done, was able to chill, hang out, etc. So I will repick that up starting this week. I have replied back to some of you and scheduled, accordingly where I can get back in the flow and rhythm. I made it clear last week. I wasn't really answering emails, so I know some people had sent emails. I'll get back to answering emails starting tomorrow, etc. And as far as I did receive, also replied back and sent receipts for people that signed up for the class. You could still sign up for the class. That cutoff date will be the end of the month. July 1st or July 2nd. I believe I did get back to everybody before I left about the book list that they would need for those classes. So if you are interested in any of the aforementioned things, the ritual on the 29th of this month, the classes that we're getting ready to do starting July 7th, or a spiritual consultation or a reading, you can contact me at the email in the description box, which is khnum19@gmail.com. All right. So again, if you were trying to contact the email, as I said, I went on a little trip, was able to get some spiritual work done and have, some personal downtime also. We'll be also traveling this weekend. It's a little short trip though this weekend. Shouldn't really affect the flow of much that I'm doing. It's a weekend thing. But I'll keep people posted on that. All right. Yeah. All right. So while I was away, well, first of all, I'll just greet everybody that came in. Smooth to God, peace. Yeah, this is my little man right here. This is my youngest son. This is John. Say hello. Hello. Wait. He's just hanging out with me, playing over here with his cars. Peace to Black Quartz, Ishmael El Bay, Brother Dan, Gypsy Goddess, the Mindful One. All right. If I missed anybody else or if you came in the room, peace. All right. So while I was away for the last several days, I had a chance with a good friend to go catch the movie Deadpool2 this past Sunday. I seen the first one. It's rare, in my opinion. I know everybody's gonna have their own opinion, their own, interpretation, but it's rare that a sequel actually is better than the original. Now, if you haven't seen it, I'm not trying to ruin the movie. I don't really think it matters. we're mature adults. I'm not trying to ruin the movie, but there's some key points or areas of it I want to point out. A lot of messages in that movie, my opinion. And again, when you're on this path, you look at a lot of these movies a little bit, different than you would just an average individual watching it. So, like I said, I had a chance to catch it Sunday with a good friend, and me and her were sitting there watching it. And from the very beginning, they threw the messages out. I'm going to kind of correlate it as I'm watching it. I'm also watching it and putting it into perspective of what an adept goes through on this path, the challenges, the obstacles you face, how you overcome them, how they can also hold you back, because all those messages and themes were prominent, and there was a lot of hidden, or if you want to say, occult messages in the movie. It also made me reflect on understanding the concept in the 7 Hermetic Principles, or the Kabbalion, all within the all, right? Now, I know we talk about the first doctrine of mentalism, which is all is mental, the mental is all. But what I want to kind of connect this to is all within the all, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that straight out of the Kabbalion and kind of connect it to the movie and the messages that they were kind of putting out there. So, all right, so the movie starts off. If you've seen the first one, this one kind of picks up where he's Deadpool was still doing his superhero quote unquote thing. So they show some clips in the beginning, et cetera, of him fighting crime, et cetera, whatever he's doing. But then it starts with a clip in the very beginning of where he realizes obviously there's something wrong in his life. You can't really pin it at first. All right, that's how the movie starts off. And then he backs up and tells you how he gets to that point, right? So just to kind of breeze you through it and then kind of get into the meanings of it. His girlfriend, who they snap to a scene in the beginning. They're planning on having a family, having kids. Well, anyway, she gets shot and killed, and that's where everything starts to go downhill for him as far as the reality of who and what he was. Now, the theme of it all is, even though all this stuff was going on, around him, he was really the cause of it, because it was his approach to everything. You see the scene after his girlfriend transitions. How most people, when they go through some type of tragedy, they take 2 routes. They either can take the pity route, feeling sorry for themselves, or they could try to approach it the best way they can to try to overcome it. Well, he kind of takes the latter at first, the pity route, feeling sorry for himself. And then he's offered, assistance. I'm just going to go through this quick. He's offered assistance, by some of his friends, that are connected to the whole X-Men thing, to try to get him back on his feet. He even kind of blows that opportunity, because the theme was his heart wasn't really in the right place in the beginning as he's trying to overcome these obstacles. But it goes even further. The way he approached everything, his heart and his mind wasn't into it. And it made me reflect and think on people that are also on this path. But that was his problem. He kept being told that. He even had visions, dreams / of his girlfriend who got killed, telling him that, it's about where his heart is, right? Now, I say where his heart is, we have to apply that to ourselves as Black adepts. Where the heart is not just talking about just this. It's the heart and the mind kind of work in conjunction, because how the mind feels is where the heart's going to go. And if you're feeling pitiful and sorry for yourself, well, the heart's going to feel that. It's going to go there if you take that approach. So he has to learn how to pull himself together and figure out, you know, was this just about him getting himself together, you know, to get revenge for the death of his girlfriend, which that was only part of it. It was really more so for himself. Then again, the funny part, even though they presented it as humor, then he tries to put this team together, which completely fails, right? Which really represents, again, him trying to externalize it away from himself and not really understand. He could have gathered together a team of 1 million. That wasn't going to fix the problem that he was dealing with his heart being in the wrong place, right? And sometimes that happens to us on this path. The heart and the mind's in the wrong place. And here's where the key message comes through. When you're a bullshitter and you're bullshitting yourself, and you use that bullshitting yourself to try to bullshit other people, it's going to blow up in your face. This is what happens to the character. You got to be one on this path. You got to be real with yourself. You got to understand your strengths and your weaknesses. You got to know your abilities and your lack thereof. You have to do, when we talk about doing a inventory or a thorough stock of yourself, right? When we talk about doing that, that's the key to at least starting out and being on the correct or the right path. You can't even start the journey if you haven't started there. And then what tends to happen is, and just like you see with the character, some of us get on this path, we get some results, we start to achieve certain things, and then the fucking ego kicks in. The ego starts to take over. You think now because you've done a little something that you've made it to the top, and or you take on this mentality that you're better than other individuals, or you think you're a slickster, you think you can bullshit people and run game on them, and really the only person that you're bullshitting is yourself. And this is all shown in the character. Sometimes you can get caught up in your persona, you can get caught up in your abilities, gifts, talents, or powers, and confuse that, or get under that illusion that you're untouchable, or that you're better than other individuals, which really ultimately leads to a downfall. Now, when we say we humble ourselves on this path, doesn't mean that one has to be timid and you have to be taken advantage of, or turn the other cheek, because that's not what this path is about. But sometimes we got to learn to humble ourselves in certain situations. That in itself is a godlike or a goddess-like quality. Not to always see, that's a part where we talk about our egos, and where ego can be something that could be detrimental to you, whereas just as much as it can be an aid and very helpful. But sometimes when you don't make right decisions and right actions and humble yourself in certain situations, that's where you run into trouble. Well, this is what happens to the character. And as you know, if you've watched the Deadpool 1 and 2, and I'm getting, apply this to yourselves. I'm trying to use this character / archetype. Apply it to yourselves. May not, every aspect of it fits you, but a lot of it's going to fit, or you might know others that fit that. But as you know, the character is very, condescending and arrogant, and kind of gets caught up in his own, glory and self-value, right? So he, goes through these hardships of getting himself back together to get on the path. And after he has the vision with the ex-girlfriend about his heart not being in the right place, there's a character that he's locked up with. Again, I'm trying to give you the gist of it. I don't want to ruin the entire movie for everybody. But there's a little young kid in there that he's kind of connects to the story of the movie, that he kind of needs to look out for and help. And he realizes, after he has the vision, with the girlfriend, that's where his heart needed to be, to help a kid who's technically an innocent victim of circumstances that he's not aware of. So now he's learning the value of, it's not just about you. It's not just about you feeling sorry for yourself or feeling sorry for your circumstances. or those things that are connected to you. Sometimes there's a bigger picture, and the bigger picture was for him to really understand the potential of his mind and the power of his mind and the power of his spirituality. He didn't really understand true intention, right? We always talk about intent, and there's a heavy theme in the movie about intent. And you find out when as I'm watching it, and I kind of correlate it to myself on this path and other people on this path, it made me question a lot of things about intent. Where is your intent? Because the intent you put out there, in a sense, lays out the energy for the path that you are trying to create, whether you're going to be successful or not. And sometimes this is the telltale sign of why we are not successful, because our intent isn't correct. Okay. Meaning sometimes we do, like, all right, if somebody does something and you say on the surface, you do something, say, to help somebody. If you're expecting shit in return, then your intent isn't in the right place. Now, if you receive something in return without expecting it, that's a different scenario. But when you're automatically, expecting something, then your intent wasn't in the right place. Let me liken it to, let's just say, you see a homeless person out on the street, or religious people will sometimes tend to do this. They sometimes do things to be seen, because it's not because they really want to help something or somebody. It's more so the publicity or the glory they'll get from doing it. That, again, is a misdirection of intent. I'm using all these little metaphors to say, now analyze yourself. You come on this path. You know the possibilities and the capabilities of what can be accomplished. Ask yourself, are you within the parameters of where you need to be, or are you operating outside of that? Okay, that's what I mean when I say all within all. Because bottom line is, if you think you can work your way around, quote unquote, your bullshit or your shiftiness, you're basically fooling yourself. Because if all things are connected, you understand, everything works in unison. You got to understand I don't want to say repercussions in a punishing way, but you got to understand what are the effects that's going to come from the decisions you make, right? To get to the end point, long story short, as he overcomes a lot of the quote unquote obstacles and challenges, you see at first when he has a vision and he tries to reach his girlfriend, they have like this little liquid thing between them that he can't penetrate because he's trying to have some type of inner reaction with her. That's because at that moment he still had not evolved or overcome what we call the first death, right? And let me explain what that is. We've talked about that in some previous videos. So now I want to get to that point in the title, The First Death, because really the entire theme of the movie is overcoming the first death, right? He had to overcome the first death. He started to become a victim to the first death. What is the first death? Let's revisit that real quick. Because as I said, there's a scene where he has some type of vision where he actually, kind of like the movie, he goes into that sunken place. He gets sucked into some deep water liquid and he pops up in this vision. You got to pay attention to all that. And he can't penetrate this liquid wall, this liquid barrier. That's because, one, when we use the information about our crown chakra and the pineal gland vibrating at the correct frequency, so we can be open and receptive to spiritual development, growth, spiritual impressions, experiences, that has to be functioning. So at that point, what it's trying to show, none of that was working for him. He was disconnected on a multitude of levels. Okay. So he goes back, long story short, after he accomplishes what he's supposed to accomplish without giving the entire movie away, he comes back and he's able, here's the deep thing, after his heart and his intent was in the right place. That, if you're somebody that traveled to Masonic Lodge, he's now able to go through this liquid barrier to make contact with his ex-girlfriend. But how they do it is she sticks her hand out, he puts his hand in, and they're pulled in by the lion's paw of Freemasonry, which is If anybody's gone through a Masonic lodge, you know when on that third degree, when you're dying, resurrected, and brought back to life, you're pulled up out of the ground with the lion's paw, symbolizing you are reborn again, that you have overcome the first death. Because really, the first 3 degrees in the Blue House of Freemasonry is about overcoming the first death and being reborn. What does that mean to reborn? Not reborn in the sense of how Christianity teaches it, being reborn into spookism. It means being reborn, renewed. You're now awake. You're not mentally dead no more. Because remember, the first death is a mental death. And what causes that mental death? Misinformation, practicing incorrect spirituality, believing in spook gods, being indoctrinated by faith and belief systems, being controlled by external things around you in society, your environment, people, etc. These are all aspects that lead to one becoming a victim of the first death. So yes, it's being reborn spiritually, being reawakened. This is what the first death is. So the whole movie is about him fighting and overcoming the first death. And sometimes a lot of people can sink and become a victim to the first death when they lose somebody close to them, a loved one. We've all experienced it, I'm sure, on some level. I've gone through it several times recently with my father this past January. That sometimes makes somebody become a victim to the first death. They sink into depression. They start feeling sorry for themselves. A lot of mental imbalancements or disharmony can start to affect the brain. You see all this. Everything I'm telling you, you see this in the character in the movie. And even though the movie, to me, is well put together and it's covered in a lot of humor and comedy and action, you know, obviously we watch this again as individuals on this path. We look at it a little differently. I found it real interesting when he finally awoke spiritually, that he was pulled in through that porthole liquid by the lion's paw of Freemasonry, which I thought that's not a coincidence. So they're telling you and showing you a lot of the stuff that we study on this path. They're showing you this. And I'm watching this shit like, man, I know people are watching this shit like it's entertainment and they think like, oh, this is a good action movie. But I'm watching this like, man, there's a lot of subliminal occult messages that they're throwing. I mean, obviously we know they do this with a lot of movies. But that was the vibe, frequency, and energy that I immediately connected to. Watching this movie was, you know, wow, they're showing you how you have to overcome the first death or you can't grow. So I say that to say to all of us that is on this path, we really got to do a deep introspective of ourselves. Where are you at? Are you really doing work? Or are you bullshitting yourself? Are you putting on a facade? Are you putting on an act? Are you trying to create a persona and an image that you're trying to portray to people? Are you being deceptive in what you're trying to portray to people? Because in the end, you're really just fooling yourself. You're not fooling anybody. We know that on this path. And the first step we tried to do is this would be all parts of addressing aspects and issues that we have about ourselves that need to be corrected. And the intent part, that can never be negated. Where is your intent? Again, as I've mentioned before, I will always ask people, look, you know, why do you want to come on this path? And as long as it's an answer somewhere in the avenue of, you know, to better myself, be it spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, then your intent should be in the right place. If you're on it for some other spooky bullshit, what this tend to do, because I've seen it, it can do it very easily to a lot of people. It can make your life even more complicated. When you start fucking around and playing around with forces and energy that you're not prepared to deal with. This is what we mean when we say black magic can be dangerous, not in a spooky sense. not like some mystical demonic spirit's going to come and fucking devour you or something, but it can turn your life upside down. Because if you're not being real with yourself, number one, and you're not being real with others, then let's call it what it is. It's going to create problems for you. So if somebody can't be real with others, number one, then they can't be real with themselves. We have to question that in dealings on all levels, in working rituals. How can you think a ritual is going to be effective if you're one of those individuals? How do you think you're going to be able to obtain consistent results? So when we use that terminology, you're your worst enemy. That can't be more true in a case, in a scenario more like this. So look, we have to start asking ourselves, are we really on that path to overcoming that first death? You understand? Are you really? Because I still see a lot of people, and I'm not saying this being judgmental or trying to act like I got all my shit together and I'm not dealing with no stuff, because that's not true. But I do see a lot of others that I don't think they're overcoming that first death. They're still victims to all of those things in society that they claim they've overcome. And indoctrination is the hardest thing for a lot of people to lift up off their subconscious minds. Religious belief. Some people are still struggling with morals and personal dogmas that they've, falsely convinced themselves that they are completely over. This also leads to becoming a victim of the first death. But one of the key things, and I've seen this many times, not being real with yourself, which filters out to others around you, it becomes like a domino effect. You understand? So you gotta when we say be real with yourself, where are you right now? When you analyze your strengths and your weaknesses, all right, the strengths, that's an easy thing to work on because you keep building upon that. But when you analyze the weaknesses, do you have a strategy to overcome them? So it doesn't mean you just, all right, I'm going to do a stock on myself. These are my weaknesses. Okay, you've identified them now. But have you put a plan into action to correct them? And I find that you either have people that are not admitting to any of it or don't have no course or plan of action. And as I said before, this is the only path that you can't bullshit it. You can't bullshit yourself and others, because anybody that's a true practicing occultist will see the bullshit manifest out of you over time. Trust me when I tell you that. Okay, it will come out, and that energy, again, I say, as I said, it's a domino effect. By what you send out, that affects the effects of it. It automatically returns. Trust me, and I don't say that in a spooky karma way. I say that when we talk about cause and effect in the 7 Hermetic principles, because there's cause and effect to everything. So when something comes back to you that you might label quote unquote negative, what you doing? You looking through your binoculars? Oh. When you send something out, that's the cause. So understand when that effect comes back, the cause are the decisions and the choices that you make. That removes the spookism out of that whole, because some people look at karma as some spooky shit. It's not. It's not even that deep. Your decisions are the cause of the effects. When we say that we have free will on this path, let's understand what free will is. Free will, how we look at it on the left-hand path, or as opposed to a religious person looks at it. And as I said before, on the religious path, there is no such thing as free will, because there's punishment consequences if, you exercise your will in accordance with that religious dogma. Well, it's a little different on the left-hand path. When we say free will, you ultimately have the 100% free will to do whatever it is you want. But the responsibility factor comes in. You must understand the cause and effect of those decisions. As long as you understand the cause and effect of those decisions, and you have prepared yourself to deal with it, you will never have a problem. Trust me when I tell you. But if there is deception behind your unwarranted deception behind your decision-making process, and you're not warranted in that deception, that creates problems. Trust me when I tell you. Don't let anybody bullshit you. I don't care what anybody says. So let's not act like when we say the left-hand path of indulgence, free will, it doesn't mean to just be a wild ass of a person and you disregard anything and everything. There is still a certain level of discipline that has to be applied. Don't let nobody bullshit you and shit you, because if they are, then they're not really teaching what left-hand path doctrine is really about. Because remember, being a god or a goddess also means being responsible, right? That's what it means. Or one aspect of it is to be responsible. How are you being responsible? You understand? Are you being responsible in the sense just pure selfishness on your part? Now, there has to be, let me say this. There has to be a certain level of selfishness in the sense you must put yourself first, because we do understand the Black adept is at the center of their universe and everything should evolve around them. So there is a certain level of selfishness. But when that selfishness filters out to others where you may not be warranted or in position to utilize it, that's when the shit causes problems. You understand what I'm saying? So let's make sure we understand that. Let's see if this ain't gonna be too long of a class, but real quick, I'm gonna go through the chat in a minute. And again, if you have any questions, just go ahead and start typing them in now. If you got some dialogue, something you want to ask, like I said, I plan on staying on this for just about an hour this evening, because I know I've been gone for a little bit. Like I said, I was on a trip since last Thursday. Was able to get some spiritual work done. Had a good time. Like I said, was able to see the movie with a good friend of mine on Sunday. So everything kind of lined up, and you get something out of everything. So I myself, got a lot out of my last trip, and that's just how life is sometimes. You get, if you want to use the term revelations, those revelations obviously come from the experiences that we have. And again, I can't stress enough, and those that know me know it's about doing fucking work. If you don't do no work, it shows. I don't care. You ain't fooling me. You ain't fooling nobody. You can say all you want with your tongue, and talk about how you're this and how you're that. But that's irrelevant. That kind of goes out the window. You know what I'm saying? So it's good when you see people that are actually doing work. It's good when you got people around you that are actually working, the path and not just talking about it or presenting themselves as some high, mighty, deep individual, and they're so deep and nobody's on their level type of shit. But all that fades in time. Trust me when I tell you that. Usually that individual will find themselves all in their lonesome, and not in a good way like the isolated consciousness, more in a way that they're going to come to that realization when they realize all the bullshit is stripped away. So it's about doing work. Don't let nobody kid you. The reading, the studying, and the research, that's very important. Don't get me wrong. But you have to back up, where you stand on the path by way of your actions and the work that you're doing. If you're not doing any work, by all means, then you're just a researcher / studier or somebody, somebody that's intrigued. We're not really into it, just for that, to be intrigued. We're trying to, get results. And my boys are blowing it up tonight. All right, so let's go through the chat. Having said that, again, I've got some questions. I kind of want to finish it up. I don't want to get too much in details with the movie, because if you haven't seen it, I wanted to give you the gist, the foundation of it. But really the message and the theme, and I want you guys to go see it, watch it. Tell me if you got something similar. I'm not saying everybody's going to go watch it and get exactly what I got out of it or what my friend got out of it when we were watching it. You might get something else entirely different. But I think the theme is there about overcoming the first death. about being spiritually reborn. And to become spiritually reborn or become renewed, you have to shed all your old ways. That's what the message being pounded in the movie is. You know, you might think you're doing the right things because what you think you know may not necessarily be what's actually what you need. You understand? So the message is definitely there. You must shed all those things about you that's holding you back, all those things about you that's messing you up, all those things. If not, you'll never be able to take that next leap or that next growth or step in your spirituality. All right. So hopefully you guys at some point can see the movie and tell me what you get out of it. All right. So let me go through the chat. Like I said, I plan on staying on for about another 20, 30 minutes. This ain't going to be too long. Okay. Again, real quick. I know some people came in late. Again, for the ritual on the 29th. If you still are interested in attending that ritual, that we're probably going to cut the invite off in about a week, 5 to 6 days. We ain't taking no more invites. That's going to be on the 29th. That's the invocation of Set Heru. Or spiritual consultations, readings, classes. You can still sign up for the class, which is going to start on the 7th. For all those things, again, you can email me at khnum19@gmail.com. All right. I'll remind you one last time. Dan. All right. So let's go through the room here. Let's see what we got any questions. Yeah, Jesse Goddess. That is my son. As I said earlier, that's my little guy. It's my 4-year-old. I know some people asking. Peace to Baphomarga. Peace, sister. All right. I'll skip the sidebar. Okay, I don't really see any questions. I just see some chat. Baphomarga says, "Oh, look a little Beniti." Yeah, that's a little Beniti. All right, what else we got? I don't really see any questions here. All right, I gotta look like we got something here. Okay, Sister Manny types in, everything you're saying hits home right now. I swear, the closer the family I get to finishing that new home, everything is trying us a pep. Bring it. Yeah, and that's true. And let me touch on that for a minute. I'm glad you bring that up. One thing you're going to notice on this path, and a lot of you probably can relate to this, and I'm glad you bring that up, Sister Mandy. When you start, this is crazy because I've experienced this a multitude of times. You waving? I've experienced this a multitude of times, and I'm sure a lot of us have. When you start becoming successful on certain levels and getting results, it always seems bullshit starts to come from left and right. And I like how you use the term a pep, and that's a good way to look at it. You start making wise decisions or separating yourself from things. Then you ever notice knuckleheads you're trying to get away from start calling you out of the blue? People you don't want to have anything to do with start trying to reach out to you and contact. You ever notice this? When you make a decision to stay disciplined and be on this path and make a change in your life, again, knuckleheads start coming out the blue you want nothing to do with. People start contacting you. Or you make a career or a business decision to maybe start your own business and you're in that direction. Then all of a sudden, all these great jobs start calling you. You understand? This happens. And this is when somebody really needs to be aware. And I'm going to use, like Sister Mandy said, that is, a pep, them forces of chaos and confusion coming out of you or coming at you. That's where you need to really use your spiritual intuitiveness and awareness and make correct and wise decisions. And it always seems to also come in the form, and you're going to notice this more and more. Your biggest individuals that are your obstacles and challenges on this path are your direct family. One, especially if they're not aware really of what this path is about, because it's such a different adverse energy to them, you start to see they become bigger obstacles and problems than they were prior to that. You understand? And you tend to deal with more intense and high levels of bullshit with family members because they don't fully understand this path. And you're putting out a different energy that's completely different from their energy. So now you got to deal with that nonsense. But that's what tends to happen when you start getting certain level of success or results on this path. You start dealing with more obstacles and challenges. And that's what I mean when I've said before, contrary to belief, people think it gets easier when you're on this path. It does not. It gets more challenging, complicated, not complicated in the sense beyond your control or beyond what you can handle. No, because if you are seasoned and you know, well-rounded, where you headed, buddy? Out here? Okay, cool. You know, when you are well-rounded in all areas of the path, you deal with it, and trust me, when it's flowing, there's no greater path to be on, and I say that from experience and results. So don't let your guard go, and that's part of what I was talking about earlier. How you can think that, you know, that goes back to what I said in the very early part of the video. How you get some people that get on this path and get some results, and it goes to their head, and they think, you know, now that they've claimed they've gotten something or somewhere, where that's where you kind of got to humble yourself and put the brakes on and say, you know, the potential for growth is unlimited. You understand? So that's a good point. It's good, and a good analogy to put that a pep in there, because that's exactly what it is. All right. Sister Baffa Margaret puts in there, yeah, reborn spiritually, when I was talking about the movie earlier, and that's really what it's about. When you come on this path, that's why you come on this path, because technically you should have that awakening where whatever you left or are leaving behind, that is the overcoming or the resurrection from the first death. Now, look, even when you get into your religious stories, that's really what the Jesus story really is about. You know, even though they're, you know, centralizing physical characters and creating this mythology, right? You always hear the term Christ consciousness, right? Do we really know what that means? You hear in a lot of conscious circles, you know, what that really, the Christ consciousness, just really a simple term for becoming a God, right? That's really what the Christ story represents and how it applies to you, not the literal religious bullshit of it that people tend to get themselves caught up in who are stuck in religion, but it represents, again, being reborn, being renewed, you know, coming to the awareness, you know, of all the false doctrines and lies that you've been programmed with since birth. That's all connected. So I can't stress it enough, but Baffa Margaret hit it right on the head. That's definitely what it's about. It's about being reborn spiritually. So we hear that term. I don't even think religious people know what it means. Excuse me one sec. Yeah, so I'm not even sure religious people fully grasp what that really means. But when we were talking about vampire magic and the elements of vampire magic a few weeks back, that's a very, very important concept in vampire magic. Overcoming the first death, which is mental, and that leads one on the path to immortality. How can you, say, you are a god or a goddess when you're still a victim to all of those things? It just doesn't work. All right, let's see what else we got here. Also, Baffa Margaret typed in, you must be true to your energy, otherwise it will not be true to you. And that's 100% right. That's what I was talking about earlier. If you ain't real with yourself, how can you be real with others? Energy, You know, especially, let me say this too, also on this path. And I want to make sure we're crystal clear on this. We talked about, when again, back, there was a part in that vampiric class video where it talked about in the Vampire Magic book, be careful of doing work against somebody that's on working the same current you are. And that's, we'll make sure we're clear on that, because that can come back to bite you in the ass. If you're not justified in any shape, form, or fashion, it's different if you're in danger or something severe, which opens the doorway and gives you the right to do some type of spiritual work. But be careful of that. That's part of being true to the energy. There are guidelines and principles that govern it. Principles, not rules, laws, and regulations in the sense from a strict religious perspective. But remember, if you're working on a similar current, you need to really make sure the decisions you're making and exercising and working with that energy or that current. So yes, you have to be true to yourself, true to your own energy, or it will not be true to you. Trust me. This is all part of the principles. Remember, the 7 Hermetic principles. They're not laws and regulations. Somebody had brought that up a little while back. They had termed it as laws. They're not laws. Okay. Understand the difference between laws and principle. Laws is something that's established, you know, more so by physical beings. Laws also ties into the area of rules and regulations that must not be broken, because then there's consequences. Principles is saying, look, like, for example, the 7 Hermetic principles. Principles is basically saying, look, this is what governs the situation. You still have the free will to exercise however you want, but understand that there's certain principles that govern it, and this is how they work. So now you have certain information and tools that you will either utilize or not when proceeding forward. That's a little bit different. So we must understand the context of both of those, because sometimes we're not looking at it in the correct perspective. So you most definitely have to be true to the energy, or it will not be true to you. If you abuse this path for selfish gain and you're not justified, that's a principle that governs it. Doesn't mean you can't do it. That's where the law thing's separated, because like as a religious law, you can't do this. You know, religion has all those restrictions, and they have some stupid punishment backed up with it. But when you're abusing the path or abusing the energy, like for an example, you have people that work with the spirits of the dead or practice palo or work voodoo or voodoo, and some do it for just selfish ass reasons. And I said in a class a long time ago, and I've been saying it actually for years, look at the country of Haiti, for an example, right? Haiti can be one of the most powerful countries in the world, okay? The reason why they're not, they have more, and I know Brother Jax, who's in here, who could probably even add to this, being of Haitian descent. And obviously you guys know Jack's a good brother of mine. We always have these conversations. You know, Haiti could be one of the most powerful countries in the world if they use that spiritual power and work together as opposed against each other. But colonization has taken over there. Gentrification, class separation. So the powers that be use it for selfish gains and not as a whole. And you're seeing the effect of it, nationwide as a country. I mean, look how Haiti was able to get its independence and achieve. But when that money and power came in, and like you say, people think and act as if there aren't rich, wealthy people in Haiti. That's the biggest bullshit ever. There's serious money in Haiti. They only show you the shit on the news where the areas that are impoverished. That's because just like every other country, you got the hierarchy and the political system and the powers that be that hoard all the wealth. But we know the power of voodoo or voodoo, which is an aspect of this path. And we know there are a lot of individuals that don't use it for a beneficial, aspect in the sense collectively as a nation. When you look at it over there, so unfortunately, that mental indoctrination even spreads to these high spiritual systems. It's there. We have to make sure. It don't mean, now again, it has to be a certain level of selfishness in the sense where you put yourself first. But when it starts to filter out in a negative light, as far as when I say negative, where it starts to affect things as a whole, such as the country of Haiti, then you see the effects of abusing the path. Now, I'm not saying that in a spooky karmic sense, because I remember when the earthquake hit a few years ago, you had spooky ass people saying, oh, the reason why that detrimental earthquake hit Haiti was because God was angry with them because they practiced voodoo. We have religious fucking people saying that from all walks of life. That's the biggest bullshit. That's not why it happened. It's just a misdirection of them. They brought it upon themselves, just like anything else in life, because of how they're using that spiritual power. Okay? Remember, when you say, okay, that's a cataclysmic event or disaster in nature, what brings about those cataclysmic events? Remember, when you connect the microcosm and the macrocosm and how nature relates and connects to us, an aspect of the energy we send out is the energy we're going to draw back into us. We're bringing about all these global changes that's going on all across the planet. We're bringing about these weather changes. We're bringing about even this political climate that's happening right now in this country with Donald Trump. See, this is how a black adept looks at it. We don't look at it as, oh, this is something external. We have brought this upon ourselves. And when you're saying to yourself, well, how did we do that? Real simple. First and foremost, let me say this. If you're bitching about Donald Trump and you didn't vote, then just shut the fuck up. That was step one. It's that simple. If you're sitting back not doing anything, that's the physical part. The second part, dealing with nature, this has to happen. When nature is bringing about change, it fucking wipes out everything in its path. And I'm not just talking about physically through cataclysmic weather events. There's been a great spiritual shift on the planet. Now, I said before, what was the 2012 pole shift really about? Right? People were presenting that shit as if it was the end of the world. And if you go back, and when people that know me go back, and even on some of the old YouTube videos that I first did in my first year on here, I tried to tell people from day one that 2012 had nothing to do with a physical end of the world. It had to do with a mental and a spiritual end of the world. There was a great mental shift because the magnetic poles of the planet shifted on December 21st, 2012. There was a great shift in spiritual consciousness. When the magnetic poles shift or shifted on this planet, there's a connection with those magnetic poles and grids within ourselves. There was a shift in spiritual and mental consciousness. Now, how do you know that that's true? Real simple. If you can sit here and tell me, shit, that's about right around the time, not that there wasn't crazy shit happening before 2012, but there was. But think of some of the most intense, drastic shit that's happened in the last several years. It's really started to happen from that point on, confirming that that's what the 2012 pole shift was really about. Really sit back, think, reflect, and meditate for a moment. All this crazy shit, be it the Trayvon Martin case, police brutality, cataclysmic storms and events, it's really popped off heavy since 2012. Weather changes, climate changes. This is not a coincidence. So if you want your answer to what that was all about, that's what it really represented. And when Hollywood put out a movie trying to make money off of this, the movie 2012, that's when it should have been a red flag and you should have said to yourself, okay, there's more to this than it is. And believe me, don't front. There was a lot of motherfuckers running around thinking it was the end of the world. Okay, and might be some watching this video that thought that. Maybe he wasn't at the state he was at that you at now. But I was telling people from day one, if you went back into the Mayan calendar, the prophecies of the Mayans, they predicted it. It's encoded there. You understand? And people ran with it. People got spooked out. People got scared. But those that were spiritually linked and tuned in, we didn't get scared because we knew. Those that really studied, we knew. Now, you should reflect back. Something did happen to you on that day, whether you were aware of it or not. Some people, I know, might have got headaches and got sick. Some people had spiritual experiences, and some people, nothing happened. But believe me, something happened to each and every one of us on that day, whether you are aware of it or not. Now, remember, I've always said in previous videos and classes, when nature is changing, you either move along with it as it's changing or you become a victim of it, right? We have a saying in the Shriner Lodge, when one becomes a Mason and crosses over or attempts to cross the hot desert as they enter the shrine, they must keep pace with the sun, right? It's symbolic. They must always keep pace with the sun, but once they get behind the sun devours them up and burns them up. Well, this is talking symbolically how one must stay in tune with nature on that level and how it connects to your spirituality. And that was a major event. That was a great shift mentally, again, whether you were aware of it or not. And I ask people, reflect back, meditate for a moment on really when shit started really going to another level of fucked up in this world. It was from that point forward. Now, also understand that shift started to gradually happen. It was a couple-year process. It just didn't start and happen. Those poles, the earth shifted on its axis. It's a gradual shift that takes an X amount of time. Now, this is something that happens every 25,000 years, roughly. Now, let's back up for all of those that might have experience in the Nation of Islam or the Nation of Gods and Earth, right? What do they say the time frame after the Quran, right? And this is symbolic. They say travels 1 mile per land for the entire landmass or circumference of the planet Earth, which is what? 24,896 miles. The Earth renews its history, right? That's right there in the lessons, right? Well, this is what it's talking about, okay? The Earth has now begun to renew its history. It's that fucking simple. And this is why you're seeing the great change. This is why you're seeing all of this. Look, when you look amongst us, melanated people and all of the bullshit they're involved in, look how it's gone to an all-time level. I'm Black Hebrew Israelite. I'm a Muslim. We're all at odds. Shit is haywire and chaos, right? It's gone to another level. The bullshit has gone to another level since that time frame. Because what tends to happen, this also is symbolic, as the earth gets closer to the sun, right? And I started talking about this back in 2004, maybe 2003, around that time. As the earth gets closer to the sun, right? And the sun starts to emit that energy via nature, it does two things to people. One, for those that are spiritually in tune and preparing themselves and studying, working their rituals, working the path, and getting themselves in order and aligned with this process and this change, they'll move in accordance with it. For those that are not linked in and connected, this is what tends to start happening. Shit starts to go amok for them. Their life starts to go into disarray. All types of crazy shit starts happening to them. It's not that it's bad luck. It's just that they're not spiritually growing and changing as nature changes. Because there is a nature aspect that connects spiritually to this path. Now, it's not like the right-hand path fluffies will say you must become one with nature. That's not what it means. Because remember, on this path, you're not trying to become one with anything. You're trying to work in accordance with these things, but remain your separateness or your isolated conscious aspect, or you could use the term separate identity, because that's the immortal godlike status that you're trying to obtain. But we still connect the aspect of moving and changing with nature as nature changes. If not, nature devours you. I don't care what you practice. Okay. We know this on this path, right? The lighter paths of magic, like Wicca, which deal with earth and nature magic, that's one of the focus. And remember, one of the powers of the Black Adept is to be able to combine both aspects of this path when dealing with magic. Light, if you want to say white magic, I don't really like to separate it, but if you want to say the lighter aspects, as opposed to the darker aspects. All right. So all of this is connected. Understand all that. That great shift in consciousness has begun. That's why there's an awakening in the world. That's why you see people now are standing up and rebelling. I want to throw something out there. Earlier today, wasn't familiar with this rapper that recently got shot today. He's actually from here. He actually got shot next town over. He's actually from Plantation, which is in Fort Lauderdale. He got shot in Deerfield Beach. It looked like it was some type of targeted killing. This rapper, Triple X Tenacion, if I'm saying his name correctly. Apparently, he was known in some circles. I don't stay up on a lot of the new shit, so some of you younger heads might be familiar with him. I never heard of him before, honestly, till today. But I heard a lot of popular artists coming out and talking about the brother. And he was only 20 years old, which is very sad. But there was a lot of popular rappers like Kanye West and J. Cole and some other, I guess he was known. I never heard of him. So I said, well, let me pull up some of his music. And I go pull up this young brother's music, and he's rapping about Baphomet and, dealing with a lot of the internal bullshit that we deal with. He's talking about death and or the fear of it, happiness, just dealing with your emotions and getting yourself in order. And he's exposing. I never heard of this dude till today. Some of y'all might have heard of him. And he's exposing a lot of social injustices, racism. I mean, I was really thrown back, by this young 20-year-old brother and the stuff he was talking about. He got a song. I had a conversation with the devil in Miami. This is one of the lyrics. And he assured me everything would be okay. This way he starts breaking down Baphomet. So I said, this young brother's obviously linked in to something. So I would recommend, if you've never heard of him, it's sad that, something like this has to happen. I went through he came out 2017, so he really only put out one major album and some other songs. But the brother's message is powerful. It's definitely left-hand path message. If you haven't heard of it, he may, or they may not classify it as that, but he's dropping some serious jewels. Like I said, this happened yesterday, so don't know the full extent. Apparently, it was two dudes pulled up in an SUV and ski masks with silencers, and he was targeted. But again, sad, unfortunately. It really is. From what I just, again, researched today and listening to the brother's music, very, very creative, on some next level shit. It's not what you think it is. I didn't even know he was from right around here. Plantation's about 15 minutes south of me. I mean, he's from Fort Lauderdale, Broward County. Never heard of him until today. I know maybe some of you younger heads might have, but his name is Triple X Tenacion. I believe that's how he pronounces it. It's all one word. Check the brother out. Especially, I'm listening to the lyrics and the concepts that this brother's coming with. And it's not your typical rap music. It's not mumble rap. It's on some different shit. Check it out. So I just wanted to throw that out there. All right, so we'll see what else we got here. See what else we got here. This thing jumped on me. Give me a second. Let me finish up these questions and we're going to wrap this up. All right. Wow. Damn, I missed a lot. Hold on. Okay, I found my spot. Chi types in, did you ever get further into the book I sent? I have not, Chi. I'll be honest with you. It is on my list, but again, between all the other stuff, I'm going to try to get into it. I have not. And as I said, I just got back from a trip. I was gone since last week, end of last week, and I just got back late last night, which was a very good trip, by the way. So, no, I will try too. And again, I do plan on, from the little I have read, as I mentioned before, I do plan on using some aspects of that book to do a class. So I will. Just be patient. That's that. I will. The movie that I was talking about earlier, I know DR, you came in later. You might want to go watch the beginning of the video. I'm not going to repeat, entire thing, but Deadpool 2. A lot of hidden occult science in that movie. Definitely check it out. All right. But I kind of went through, it was really breaking down the first death. So when the video posts, I'd probably go ahead and watch it. So I'm just going to kind of continue on, answer the questions in the chat. Brother Doom, aka Dan, types in, that makes sense. I saw didn't catch that. Thanks for pointing this out. I guess you're talking about the movie. I'm not sure, Brother Doom. I must have missed something. I don't know if something skipped. But maybe you could clarify. Jaleesa types in, when Deadpool's girlfriend said no, that his heart wasn't in the right place in order to get to her through the other side of the spiritual realm, to me meant that his heart is not light like a feather. Yeah, I mean, you could apply the ma'at concept. Exactly. We could also use the alchemical principle of making yourself less dense. When you go into, or you understand what coagulation means, right? When you even go on to Baphomet, right? You see that inscription on his arm in Latin, coagula, or coagulation, which is a transformative process, right? And in alchemy, one must make themselves less dense to obtain those high levels of spirituality. What does it mean to make one less dense? By ridding themselves of all of those things that keep them down or keep them back. Jealousy, envy, greed, any of those things, mental indoctrination, all of those things are things that can make one dense. Dense in the sense that they're not able, again, to obtain those levels of spirituality. It can also, again, calcify the pineal gland. We talked about that before in the past. And that's another good analogy. You could apply the weighing of the scales of ma'at, right? But in order for one to master the principles of ma'at, you must understand how the 7 principles of Tahuti work and function. They go hand in hand. As I said before, the principles of ma'at govern the objective realm, or the physical. The principles of Tahuti govern the subjective realm, the mental. They go hand in hand. So one thing I've always noticed, people are always saying, you must study Ma'at, you must study Ma'at. You can't understand Ma'at until you understand the 7 hermetic principles of Tahuti, because they work side by side. But that is a good point. Using the weighing of the feather and the heart back to the ancient Egyptian concept. And then she also, Jaleesa F also types in, Deadpool was burdened by his girlfriend's death that he thought he caused. Right. And that's the part I was saying, where he starts to feel sorry for himself, and taking pity on himself because he's using the blame game. You see all these things, but you can apply this to us and maybe others, on a multitude of level. You understand? And then she goes on to say that that's why he couldn't get to it at first, and that's what I got from the movie. Yeah, so you definitely, and I got similar. So that's why I was saying earlier, I would suggest, if you have not, to other people that are watching or listening right now, if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it and be interested to see, what you get out of it. But I think the central theme is going to resonate, as a whole. You might... you might pick up other things. People are going to watch, you're going to catch other things that other people are going to miss, etc. But yeah, definitely. Gypsy Goddess types it. I'm having major synchronicity with you right now, and even had a dream last night where I saw you, Lord. Thank you for this chat. Going to keep it with myself with due respect. Okay. We'll keep that private. And Gypsy Goddess, again, I know you're in this area. We do have a ritual coming up on the 29th. So if you are interested in attending, contact us. All right. Dion says, the movie's actually Deadpool 2. Yes. Okay. Yeah, and Baphomet typed in earlier to her earlier comment, becoming the Baphomet energy. See, that's the difference. I mean, or the Christ energy, if you want to use it in a lesser term, which he also typed in. And that's the difference. We don't want to worship Baphomet. We want to become like a Baphomet because of what Baphomet represents. And that's why it's one of the most frequently used, popular, and powerful occult symbols. We don't worship Baphomet. We don't look at Baphomet as some deity we physically worship because, as I've said a million times before, what Baphomet represents and symbolizes is the powerful thing, the masculine and feminine or androgynous, right? The four elements, earth, wind, air, fire, all within Baphomet. The Kundalini rising, right? You see the serpent, the Kundalini rising. You see the pineal gland activated, the flame of the fire coming from the forehead, as above, so below, coagulation on the arm, transitioning from one state to the next. These are all symbols of what Baphomet represents. The breasts of the female, the face of a man, masculine, feminine, perched upon the great mountain, looking down at its subjects, right? All of this represents what the black adept should embody. That's what the shit is all about. And we got to start locking those concepts in our head. So I know that's why I wear the Baphomet symbol. And it's fucked up when you talk to some people that have the balls to ask, other than the ones that are just completely scared because they're spooked out. And it's happened to me a few times where somebody will see me wearing a Baphomet pendant that's not on this occult left-hand path or whatever. And it's so amazed how some of them, and this shit just happened on my recent trip. And we were out walking about, and for the first thing somebody would say, "Oh, that deals with the devil worship and this and that." And then when you sit there and talk to them and tell them what it really represents, they get thrown aback because they didn't really know that some people utilize it in that aspect. Because the average ignorant person that's not on this path automatically thinks that, the Baphomet just deals with Satanism and devil worship, etc. That's not true. So that is an excellent point by the sister. You must become, and I like look how she got slick and typed in her name. That's pretty cool. You think I didn't catch that shit, did you? She didn't type in Baphomet. She typed in her name. Well, I don't know why you did it, but that's pretty cool. But yeah, you must become the Baphomet energy, not worship it or not pretend or I just want to wear a Baphomet chain because it's cool. Get the fuck out of here with that. It's ridiculous. All right. Anyway, Sister Mandy types in, I see it as an affirmation. The other day I was walking the dog thinking how I would have reacted. Instead, I'm grateful and laughed. Thank you. Well, that's it. So you make the adjustment on the fly. That's how you got to do it. Sister Mandy types in, seriously. She also types in, seriously, it's common sense. If you're wrong, own that shit. If you're right, then put it in that fight. Again, yeah, can't teach that shit. I suffered the wrath of ignorance. That's right. It is common sense, but I've said this a million times. You hear me say this all the time, and you are right. I agree with you 100%. It is common sense, but unfortunately, some motherfuckers don't have common sense. And I've also said you can't teach common sense. You either have it or you don't. And I've learned on this path, dealing with a lot of people have book knowledge, information knowledge, but they just don't have everyday life common sense knowledge. And that also ties into the principle that we talk a lot about. We tend to make shit more complicated than it actually is. We do that. As human beings, we are guilty of making things more complicated. And the fucked up thing is sometimes it's not even really that deep. We make, or sometimes you got the individual that don't want the common sense answer. They want some long, drawn out, deep, intense answer because they think it's so heavy and deep. And sometimes we negate the everyday common sense. So it's true. I agree with you 100%, Sister Mandy. Gypsy Goddess types in, yes, similar in Dominican Republic, but they don't show that there. No, this was in reference to when I was talking to Haiti earlier. And no reason DR has to be broke either. Yeah, I mean, the Dominicans, which I've messed with, they have a powerful spiritual system called the 21 Divisions. I've actually done some work in past years. I still do some work with Candelo, which is a archetype in that, same principle. They're connected spiritually, and obviously the Dominican Republic being so close to Haiti, some of that has influenced each other. But the 21 divisions deals with a lot of the Orishi, but they don't believe in any blood sacrifice in the 21 divisions. It's more of a spiritual path. They also deal with a higher aspect of who we know in English as the Angel Michael, or as they refer to as San Miguel, and his wife Anaisa, who are the highest archetypes in that particular path. They work with the main Orishis, Ilegua, Oshun. Again, I've done some work with that in the past, and it's actually something I probably would have gravitated more to than the Orishi shit I got into, later. But yeah, I agree. There is that connection. Then she also goes on to write Gypsy Goddess. They don't have to be broke either. I agree. They get played against each other. Smart people don't get into that DR Haiti game. It's a game. It is. And there's also that self-hate amongst people in the Caribbean. Kill me, man. There's that separation. I'm Haitian. I'm from Barbados. I'm from Trinidad. I'm from DR. I'm from Cuba. I'm from Puerto Rico. I understand the pride of your traditions that you were raised in, but we've got to learn to leave that on the back burner when it comes to this path, because when working magic on the subjective realm, that shit is all irrelevant. And it doesn't mean, I'm not saying don't be proud of your heritage, your food, your culture. You should always be proud of that, but not to the point where you are being discriminatory against other people, especially other people that look like you. There is no excuse for that shit. So these are good points. And it's funny because all this, even though we're veering off into some other areas, all of this connects with overcoming the first death. These are things that people become victims to in the first death. And there is racism amongst people of quote unquote the same tribes. It's crazy. All right. Gypsy Goddess also types in, some people think the Mandela effect comes from that 2012 ship. I know I got divorced, laugh out loud, and major changes and didn't feel too normal, but my awakening and my future path was to begin. Yeah, I've heard that concept too with the Mandela effect. And in my own personal research, and I would advise others to come to their own conclusions, I do think there is a certain level of connection with that. But one thing we can assure from that 2012 shift, there has been great change on the planet as a whole and changes within us as human beings. That's a reality. Nobody can negate that. And again, I would tell some people tonight, just stop, take a moment and reflect back from that time frame till today and take an account of how much fucked up shit has happened in this world since then. I'm saying to a new level. I'm not saying there wasn't fucked up shit going on prior to that, because there was, but it's gone to a whole nother notch. So you're seeing the changes in nature, which should reflect and resonate that you need to start changing. If not, you become a victim. And this is what I mean when I say all the time, you either are controlling the experiment or you are part of the experiment. The problem is a lot of people are part of the experiment or victims of the first death. But excellent point. Dan S. typed in 26,000 years in reference to the cycle, right? So let's talk about what are epochs and equinoxes, right? You got to familiar yourself with this. This comes from the Mayan calendar, right? They talk about an equinox is roughly 25,000 years, right? An epoch would be 2 cycles of an equinox, right? According to the Mayan calendar, this great shift happens at the point of 2 full equinoxes, or an epoch, every 50,000 years. The Earth renews its history on some level every 25,000 years, but the poles shift in accordance with those equinoxes, right? This is something that's always been there, right? The Egyptians calculated the chains based on the solar calendar at the Temple of Dendera, right? In the Temple of Hathor, right? Or Hathor or Hateru, depending on what you're studying and how you read it. So it's always been there. And one thing I've always said, what good is if we're studying all these ancient civilizations, but we're not able to bring it up into the now in 2018? It becomes irrelevant. You understand? So it's always been there. The knowledge and the awareness of this has always been there. But we've always been pushed away from this in a direction by way of religion and indoctrination to focus on nonsensical shit that's going to distract us from what's going on. That's the ploy. You understand? And that's, again, is overcoming that first death. All right. Stuffed Dog 69 types in facts. No such thing as past and future. This is why there's so many different origin stories. The renewed history of the earth is renewed mental of man. True indeed. Yet 26,000 years, and some of us have seen this before. I realized I did this many moons or cycles ago. If we're talking about being black egged ups, we already and have been. And that's so true. You know what I mean? And it takes, you got to raise yourself to the awareness of it. Like what Stuffed Dog 69 just typed in. You're not necessarily going to find that in that sequence in a book, but that's more or less coming from a practicing experience and factor. And it's true. This is nothing new, right? You hear that term, nothing new under the sun, right? We've been here before. And again, I'm not going to get into past lives things. You know, this is nothing new. We've experienced this before. You know, when we talk about a multitude of multiverses and subjective realms, you know, we understand that in relation to that there is no such thing in time as false calculated time. We went through that in a previous class. But yeah, well, you know, this is nothing new. It's just if you're on the path and you're aware, you know how to put it in its correct perspective. All right. So what else we got? But that's a good point by Stuffed Dog 69. Real good point. Mandy types in chaos. Why, what, where, when? I need to see a doctor, get on meds, everything else except looking within. Guilty. This path is confirmed. Everything I felt for years now I harmonize. Yeah, I mean that's the beauty. You all that chaos you mentioned, but mastering the craft of being a black adept is putting your personal chaos into its correct order for you, because everybody's dealing with different chaos on a multitude of different levels. So when the spirit of a pep brings that chaos, the power, the set aspect of your mind kicks in and makes order out of the chaos, right? And that's what it means, as we've said a million times, making order out of your own chaos. Nobody else can do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. You understand? And that's the problem. Some people deal with chaos constantly because rather than them figure out the solution of how to put it in order, they look for other people to do the shit for them. So they stay in a fucked up circumstance or a fucked up predicament, and they struggle, and they continue to struggle with life because they never make the intent to say, all right, I'm going to fix this shit. So what I mean by that is you can go to a million gurus and high priests and get readings and this and that. But if you're not utilizing any of the information you're getting in those readings, or hopefully the information you're getting is correct, then it's pointless. And that's why I say when I do consultations and readings, I'm not doing shit for you. And there's some of you in this room that have done them with me, you know how I work and operate. The principle is always going to center around you. You're going to do the work for yourself. We're just going to talk about what comes through, what spirits, ancestors, archetype come through in that consultation / reading, and identify areas in your life that you need work. And then we discuss and we'll bring about the solutions. But you're going to get the things you need to gather up to do the work. And then you're going to carry out the work, for yourself. That's the difference. So if you ain't taking the initiative to do it for self, it's never going to work. All right. Let's see a couple more questions and we'll wrap this puppy up. Gypsy Goddess types in. We mentioned time as reference. I was Catholic, so that for me is past tense in my changes. I had no idea where to begin. A path, yes, time doesn't exist like humans measure it. True indeed. There is no such thing. Like I said before, how we calculate time, 24 hours in a day, 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute. Just our Gregorian calendar, which they use the term Gregorian, goes back to Pope Gregory the Great. That's when the Gregorian calendar was instituted. Then you got leap year every 4 years, where they just magically add a day. I don't know where you get those 24 hours from, but they just magically find 24 hours every 4 years and throw it in there. So it's just a false calculation of time. It's not computed or put together correctly. Now, I've always said, when you look at a secondhand clock, which nobody really uses them anymore, you might see them in schools and public buildings or whatever. But I've always said you've had that secondhand, which, there's a space in between that tick and the tock. So there's right there a confession that time is not being, that space in between that tick and the tock is not being calculated. You understand? So when we say time just is, you understand? You can't really calculate a beginning or ending to it. And that's where the confusion kind of comes in. So I want to revisit that whole thing, but that's a good point. Mandy types in, no, I'm sorry, sidebar. I'm going to skip that. Yeah, in reference to that rapper, Gypsy Goddess type, I never heard of him either. A bunch of new people I don't. Yeah, again, I'm not really up on a lot of the newer artists, but I was thrown back by some of when I listened to some of it. Crazy. And Stuff Dog types in, he was a sacrifice. I do believe that too, from reading his personal history and situation, and what he was talking about. You got to be careful. Some of the things, you say, you become a target. And I do. That was one of the conclusions when I read the history and how he was taken out. And there was no interest in robbing him because nothing was taken from him. So it definitely was. Stuff Dog, they all feeding off his energy, vampires and Komodo. Yeah. And I do, yeah. And I do believe that. And I don't believe blindly. I do based on from what I heard and seen. So it's crazy. And again, only be 20 years old. It's crazy. Okay. All right. What else we got here? Hold on. Things skipped on me. Bear with me. Hold on. Things skipped on me. Oh, man, hold on. I'm trying to find my spot. Okay, here we go. Stuff Dog 69 types on signs. When niggas in the hood get silences, them shit's government issue. That's right. And that's the first thing that stood out to me, silences. And from what I read in the report, at first, some people didn't even know it was gunshots because of that. So this was definitely something that was targeted and planned. So, we know that. And I do believe it was a sacrifice. So, like I say, and I remember I saw the video he did, I guess, that caused controversy, where he was showing in the one video, which I thought was really creative. They had the little black child and the white child. And when he was talking about the lynching and the racism, to make a point, he has a depiction of the young white child being hung by a noose and lynched, which I thought was pretty creative. But, you got to be careful when you do shit like that. Yeah. Yeah, he definitely knew what was going on. Man, typing, well, I just asked my 16-year-old daughter about Triple X. She said, two girl, maybe who girl. Maybe that's what I'm not sure. Brother Doomer, to my earlier comment, okay, you were talking about the movie, okay. Girls committed suicide after listening to his music. Definitely have to listen and have a combo with her. Yeah, he gets into death pretty intense. Like I say, my first time even checking it out was today. And I was pretty surprised about, what I came across. So it's definitely worth a check for sure. What else we got here? Gypsy Goddess types in, ain't that something he knew and left that message for younger people? And even if you know they're coming in and accept it, you can be at peace and it's worth it. And yeah, one of his last comments that I heard him say was, if he could change the lives of 5 million young people and he was a sacrifice for it, that would be okay with him. So it's kind of like he knew in a sense. But that's a powerful statement. And for somebody to be only, 20 years old, it's crazy. All right, what else we got? Yeah, man, he also touched on, this generation has no idea what it's like to have a real confront them. They all hide behind the screen. So this rapper hit a nerve, apparently. That's true. And that's this new area of millennials, because they're caught up in their technology, their phones and their computers, and there's no interaction. They don't get out. Like when we were younger, we didn't have all this technology. So how we interacted with life, we got out there physically. We did things. We went places. We interacted with each other. There's not a lot of that goes on no more because, unfortunately, as I've said a million times before, social media such as this can be a great tool, but it can also be a bad tool because of what Sister Mandy is saying, that people tend to hide behind this and they become introverted or separated from real life situations. But apparently this young brother, being 20 years old, was speaking some powerful shit, and probably not some stuff you'd want to be speaking on a mainstream platform. And again, I didn't even know he was from here. So shows you how I'm not even connected to that new shit, but maybe I need to look into it a little bit more. All right. Gypsy Goddess types in, let's sidebar. Yeah. Now, from what I heard, like Gypsy Goddess, like you said, yeah, he that's not how I took like him talking, singing and rapping about death. I didn't really take it as negative. I know I'm not saying that you did, but I know the public, obviously some in the public did. Like they try to pass that off as, I didn't take it like that. From what I did hear him talking about, it's more just like everybody, that unknown. It's the unknown aspect of death, the fear of it in a sense, the perception of it. That's what I got from it. Now, if other motherfuckers was listening to that shit and that was motivating them to commit suicide, that actually they wasn't listening to what I was listening to. But again, that's where the perception factor comes in. So, yeah, I can see how that happened, though. Manny also types in, based on what I said, it seems like he hit a nerve and affected today's generation with some real, and he did. Unfortunately, some are afraid to speak to their parents about their feelings. And part of that comes from, again, the disconnect. With all this technology and, like I said, these millennials, right? They call them millennials, this new generation. They're millennials because they want everything, but they don't want to do anything for it. Like, look at everything. You can now, they got apps where you can just order food from anywhere. I mean, they want everything just to fall into their lap. Now, one thing I've seen, and again, I don't really go into McDonald's like that, but I was in there getting something to drink about a month or two ago, one of their frappe joints. And they got now these computers where you walk in the front. You don't even go to the register no more to interact with anybody. You just go. They don't even want you to go up. They don't even want you to go front. This is all this millennial shit. That's what I'm saying. It's that it cuts off that interaction, communication, and not directly interacting with people and things. And if the millennials are just focused on platforms of social media and the internet, there's that systematic method of controlling the information that's filtered to them. Whereas, like you were saying earlier, with real life situations, they're not presented with it. That's one of the main reasons why they're not presented with it, because somebody has an agenda to kind of have this, pre-presented to them or pre-planned, which is crazy. All right, what else we got here? I'm trying to wrap this up. I'm Generation X, this generation, me too. That was Gypsy Goddess. Manny types in. Okay. In reference to her daughter, I told her she's not going to bed until we talk. Well, she already knows the deal, but the shit these kids are dealing with today is nothing compared to our generation. Yeah, they're up against so much more. We weren't dealing with this because we didn't have all this technology. I mean, shit, you had a rotary phone. You know, back then you didn't even have a cell phone. You know, pages came after the fact, right? You know, now some people have, you know, they have this new thing called cell phone separation anxiety. Like some people can't even leave their house without their cell phone. They wig out, they freak out. Now just think, not too long ago, you didn't even know a cell phone existed. And some of us that are watching this right now or here right now, we lived fine and well. We never had a cell phone. We had maybe a house phone if you were lucky. And that's it. And you stepped out the house and that's it. You were out for the night. There was no people tracking you down, your phone going. I mean, just think how when you go out, everywhere you go, be it a restaurant, any public place, as soon as people get the opportunity to settle in, what's the first thing they do? They pull out their cell phone and start looking on their cell phone. I don't care if you're at a movie, a game, an event, a restaurant. So just they've been able to introduce that and make you so dependent on it. If it's that easy, just think what else they're capable of doing. But a lot of us that are from that generation back then, like I said, we had no cell phones growing up. You know, you would call your friends on your house phone, you'd meet somewhere, and you was out for the night. That was the wrap. You know what I mean? And that was it. There was no phone glued to you going off constantly. So, again, that's the day and time that we live in. Gypsy Goddess, I like my days like the freaking New Kids on the Block. The 90s were, yeah. 90s, 80s, and 90s, yep. What else we got here? Gypsy Goddess types in exactly. I don't have any kids, so I don't have the perspective, but it must be hell. I see the mess. Yeah, I mean, and you don't, yeah, I mean, you don't even need to have kids to see the mess that it is. It is a mess. I mean, all you got to do is look. Manny types in the 80s, baby, here. Yeah, I'm born in 71, but I technically was an 80s baby, I guess you can say for the most part. 90s was great too, correct, and that's why I constantly have my littles involved in everything. The Black Tower types in, and that's another good movie. If anybody hasn't seen that movie, we'll talk about that another time, do a breakdown on that. It's very interesting how we have to learn how to become these powers, not worship them. That's the key, as the religious do, or so I believe. No, you hit it on the head. You have to learn to become. And that's why when we were talking about the whole Baphomet concept earlier, you have to learn to become like a Baphomet, not worship. So you're definitely 100% on point with that. All right. What else we got here? Mandy types in, definitely not easy, but worth the fight to know it's our future that's at risk when it comes to our youth. Most definitely. Lead by example, best advice to give to anybody, period. It's all anybody. Mostly children will respect. True. Black Tower. The new generation is missing the parts of the development that those of us who grew up in the 80s, 90s, or even those from the 70s. And they are. And the challenge for us from those eras is making that connection. We're going to have to figure out a way to connect the two. That's the struggle. All right. Stuffed dog typed in, pride gone, get people fucked up, be proud and share that shit. Brown people kill me. We all kings and queens, but can't make a kingdom. And that's true. And I've always said, if we're kings and queens, especially a lot of the cats on the Egyptian Kemetic thing, my king, and, my queen, well, be a living example of a king and a queen. And that's a good point. Can't even create kingdoms, but we want to walk around calling ourselves kings and queens. Crazy. Baphomarga types in, we make simple shit complicated, no doubt, in our lives, when in fact, Life created itself from basic and simple ingredients or energies. And that's true. But again, as I said earlier, common sense cannot be taught and understood by everybody, unfortunately, because you either have that or you don't. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. I hate to say it, but that's the reality. All right. Stuffed Dog 69 types, and I think we need to make our own place in spiritual history, not follow the ancients. They built their bridge during their time with this level of knowledge. And that's a good point. We just had this conversation the other night. We can't relive those civilizations and do them again. They're done. That's an excellent point. And that's the problem with those paths and the difference with this path. You should not be on this path. And I'm glad you bring that up, Stuffed Dog. That's an excellent point. We're not trying, anybody on this path is not trying to revive a dead culture in the sense that that can't be done again. And people keep forgetting that important point. So the problem is with a lot of these groups trying to play Egypt. You got them, they're all out there, or Muslim. They're trying to relive a dead culture or a dead civilization that already had its time. By trying to reinvent it today is going to fail. And that's the problem. They use something that's already had its time, and then they're trying to recruit people into something that's dead and gone. Rather than just use the example or the message or the core teachings of those ancient civilizations and cultures and update it in 2018 and be able to apply it to yourself today on some level, that's different. But that's the problem. Yeah, we must proceed forward understanding that that can't be done again. And that's the problem. So you can sit here and talk about this and that about Egypt or Africa or whatever, but it's pointless. So how do we move forward and create something new? Because obviously at one point, those concepts, civilizations were new. So why would we want to stay stuck in 2018 and keep going backwards to something that already had its time? And that's why most of us on this path don't gravitate with any of that shit. And it strikes a nerve with us, and we don't want nothing to do with it because we look at it more as taking a step backwards as it's taking a step forward. Because you got people, you know, that practice these religions and they're doing the same old shit day in and day out, and there's no growth, there's no change. You understand? Stuffed Dog also types in, we've got the advantage of looking at this shit and building on it, not using the same, yeah, exactly, same path, different strokes for different folks. And that just tied into what I just said. I agree. And that's how we must proceed forward, right? Mandy types in, gotta go. Need to have a serious convo with my big girl before it gets too late. Yeah, I'm about to wrap this up in a minute. All right, peace, Sister Mandy. Stray Panther 79. Hold on, where the fuck we go? All right, I'm almost done here. A few more, and then just trying to get to everybody's. Stray Panther 79 types in. Oh, that's just stuff, dog. Gypsy Goddess Tyson. Yes, I'm in the area dealing with relocating logistics since I left my car out of state, but it's coming soon. I'm sure I'll meet you guys in due time. Okay, cool. Straight Panther, and trust me, everything now will be in the new history. True indeed. Black Tau, by following a finite system so much like following time. Do you think this could be one of the barriers to our infinite selves? Yes, most definitely. You make that leap when we talk about earlier, eliminating the whole time concept, finite, when you talk about finite and infinite and all that. Long story short, when you don't limit yourself and you don't put boundaries on anything, that's where the growth potential becomes unlimited. That's where the barriers are completely removed. And your subjective realm gives you the ability to tap into that and get to that level. And we don't place a beginning and ending on any of this. So once you're able to free the mind from that imprisonment of those concepts, yes, I do believe when them barriers are removed, you're able to tap into the infinite, the immortality, part of yourself, no doubt. What else we got here? Gypsy Goddess. I hate when I see people at a restaurant not talking to each other or truly enjoying their meal. I just saw this, but fucking with the phone, really. I saw people. I was noticing a family over the weekend. in an Italian restaurant that I was at over the weekend, and they sat down. It was two boys, a mother and father, and they just sat down, quiet as a mouse, and they were all doodling on their phones. Again, confirming the disconnect of interacting in real time, real people, with all this technology. You know, it's just the world we live in, unfortunately. It's fucked up, but it's the world we live in. All right. Dior, millennials didn't raise themselves, and we don't all feel entitled. Important not to let those stereotypes turn in prejudice. Many of us are out here trying to grow and contribute as well. And I do agree with that. So, Dior, if you are a millennial, I want to clarify. I'm not saying all. So, but there are a majority, a large group that do. So, again, if you're not one of those, that's a great thing. And maybe you can utilize that mindset maybe to get to some of these other younger people. So, let me correct that. We're not saying in the sense that it's all, because that would be literally untrue. But we see a large percentage as a whole, unfortunately. But it's a good point. So we do stand to correct that. All right. Thank you, brother. We have a great night. Have a great. All right. Peace out, Gypsy Goddess, Baffle Mandy. Good night, Stuffed Dog. I think we're gonna wrap this up. I think that's it. All right, Stuffed Dog. I'll check my emails. Peace to the Black Tower, Gypsy Goddess. All right. All right, so cool. I think that's it. We're gonna wrap it up. I think we covered the basis of it. Again, for any of the aforementioned for classes, the ritual consultations or readings, just the email in the description box is where you can reach me at khnum19@gmail.com. Peace, and we will talk soon. All right, go.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, guy. Yeah.